Hey everyone, we're back. I skipped a week last week, but we're back. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Russell, or as I always say, Russ to most of you. That seems to be my opening line for the show at this point. And this is Katie Breslin of Last Journey Dogs in
Hello.
Nashville, Michigan. I just found out that there is a Nashville, Michigan, so I hope I'm not the only one that didn't know that. Katie, want to tell everyone a little bit about you, what you do, and all that before we get into this?
Yeah, so, well, I'm Katie. I'm from Nashville, Michigan, not Nashville, Tennessee. I started kind of training dogs. I actually didn't even really care much for dogs, to be honest with you, growing up. We had dogs. They lived outside. They ate our table scraps, whatever. I grew up with horses. And I would say it was 16 or 17 when I started kind of getting more so into dogs. And it's interesting how much the behavioral aspect of horses and dogs really kind of translate to each other. And so, by the time I kind of got into dogs, I had a decent, I would say, base knowledge of dogs and behavior and training, reward, punishment, the whole shebang. Especially if you had a horse that bit you or kicked you, learned how to punish real quick. 1,200-pound animal is not something to mess with, just like a 100-pound German Shepherd isn't. And so I just kind of, I don't know, grew a knack and a love for dealing with kind of the dogs that had like really bad issues. I think with dogs in general and people, I've always kind of gravitated towards the projects. I like things that need me. I guess in the love languages, I'm an acts of service person. And so, yeah, I like to help make people and dogs better. And so in the last couple of years, I decided to go ahead and say, okay, this is what I was meant to do and go for it. And it's been a wild ride ever since.
Awesome. I love the idea that you're speaking about that you started with horses and switched to dogs.
Yep.
I was just at my friend's stable for a couple of days in Jersey.
Oh,
so
fun.
I've been taking some time off this month. So
yes,
I was in Jersey. He has a really nice stable with a bunch of horses, and I was watching him give lessons to young kids. And I was just sitting outside the paddock watching, and it was a very cool trip to me because I'm not a horse person. I love the animals. I think they're amazing. I don't know a lot about them besides for I watch videos on YouTube of horse lessons because I think it's really cool. And I've rode a couple of times, but I was watching him give lessons, and the way he was instructing these young children and the way he was working with the horses and the whole pressure and release and all that type of stuff was extremely cool to see it with a big animal, and the way it relates to me, like the way he was coaching these young kids and the way he was working with the horses and the few tips he's given me so that I can ride with him. And it's so similar. And the thing is, like you kind of said this quickly, is you can't let a 1,200-pound animal get away with something, right? If it kicks you, you're fucked. There's nothing to do about it.
Exactly.
And do you play a lot of that into your training?
I do, yeah. And so I would even say at some point, it does come in handy when I deal with a lot of aggression, fear, aggression, stuff like that. So it does come in handy that I know how to handle an animal that's, actively saying, fuck you. And actually fuck you back. You know what I mean? But I would say there are points of it too that kind of handicap you, in that, so with horses, food drive isn't really a thing, at least not that I know of. I don't know. I haven't been in horses, since I was 18. So 11 years now. So even sometimes when I get a dog in with really nice food drive, I sometimes even kind of forget to utilize that. I tend to be, I would say, heavier handed with certain dogs when I could be less, because I could utilize their food drive. And so it's something I'm always learning, always teaching myself, hey, don't forget to motivate the dog. And it, just like any of us, we're always learning. And if we're not, are we doing our job? Fuck no, right?
Yeah.
If you're not constantly getting better, then you're in the wrong industry. And I genuinely feel that way about anytime you work with animals. If you're not always trying to learn and always trying to get better, you're in the wrong industry.
Absolutely.
It applies to the people aspect of it too, right? If you can't train people, if you're not a good people person, are you really a good dog trainer? You know what I mean? So
the
It's
people is like more than half of this. Like the
it
dog
is.
training is really
It is.
for a lot of people. I mean, obviously there's an art and there's a skill to it, but that's something that a lot of people could learn. Being a people person, it's kind of like you are or you're not. And if you're not, you're going to
Yes.
suck at it.
Yes. And I would say that's it's a big thing I personally focus on is the people. I love dogs. I love working with dogs. I went into this because I love dogs, but through this, I've kind of learned that I almost love people more. It kind of started like, oh, I don't really like people, blah, blah, blah. And literally over time, I've learned like, okay, actually, I like the owners more than I liked that dog. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
again, that comes with working with behavioral cases. I don't get a lot of fun, nice puppies, stuff like that. A lot of the dogs I get in are tough. They're not happy. They don't want to work with you. You know what I mean? They've got bite records. They might be screwed up genetically, stuff like that. But helping people, especially people who are so committed to helping dogs like that, is really, I think, what drives me forward in doing this every day.
Yeah. I love the connection that I've made with people through their dogs. And
Absolutely.
it's funny because when I started working with dogs, when I got my first dog, I was a teenager, and he's the one who kind of got me into it. And
Yep.
then when I started working with dogs, I was very much of like, I hate people, I love dogs, so I'm going to only work with
Yeah.
dogs. And very quickly, I found out like how that doesn't really work.
Yeah.
And similar to what you were saying, it turned a lot of it around because it forced me to like hone in on my people skills that I didn't really know I had in a real way.
Yep.
I mean, like, I was a people person, but it was always like, fuck people, like animals are so much cooler.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
And like, I think that's the part that a lot of people miss in all of this is how much of a people business it really is, like the teaching aspect of it when it comes to working with owners and the connection when it comes to it and relating to owners and being relatable to owners is such a big part of it that
Big time.
is missing.
Yep.
I think it's why a lot of people, like, I look at it as you can be a great person with dogs. If you suck with people, like, you're not a good dog trainer. And even if you're not the best dog trainer, but if you're really good with people, you're probably going to be more successful.
Yep. Very true. And I would even I've told people that. So Derek, my business partner, I would say he's almost the better dog trainer. It's nice because we both bring certain elements in different aspects. Even today, he brought over his board and train, doing some, off-leash e-collar recall around distractions, And even I was able to say, hey, this is what I would do. I would take this step back, work on this instead. And he does the same thing when he comes over here and I'm working a board and train on my own. That's going to be kind of the leg up too that we have with these behavioral group classes that we're getting ready to run. But I would so much say that he's definitely the better dog trainer and I'm the better human trainer. So it's really nice to have both aspects of that. I just feel like together we kind of can offer the total training experience. You know what I mean? So
you balance it out.
Yes. Yep. It's really nice to have that.
That's awesome. And you have a bit of an obsession with German Shepherds, I assume.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Are they all yours? I see you with like 6
Yeah.
German Shepherds. How many do you have?
I have 4 personal and a foster. So I have 5 technically right now. Yep.
And do you attract a lot of them because that's what you have, like business?
Yeah, I would say so. A lot of my business comes from local German Shepherd groups, stuff like that. There's just I would say German Shepherds might be the most popular breed in Michigan. Them or bully mixes, pit bulls, whatever you want to call them. That's a lot of what you see here. You're pretty far-fetched to see things like Dalmatians. We see some Shar-Peis, Great Danes, stuff like that, but it's a lot of Shepherds, a lot of pits and bully mix type things. And a lot of it, Michigan, very farmy, used to be tons of farmland. It used to be, I think a lot of these dogs were farm dogs, and that was just kind of the tradition. That's a big thing you hear too, is like, oh, I grew up with German Shepherds. And now, we're not so much on farms, and these dogs are kind of living in the city. They're having to be modernized with us. And that's a lot of where this kind of comes from, I think, is we're helping the breed adapt as well as the people adapt to the working breed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we get a ton. I would say probably 90% of my business is German Shepherds.
It's a tough thing. I think, I mean, obviously it's tough for owners of these types of dogs, but it's really tough on dogs who, especially if genetically, like if you're saying those are like the dogs that kind of were around there, right? Hanging out on farms and like that's what they're meant to do. And they have that genetic in them. And now we're asking them like, be a home dog, be a family dog. And it kind of leads to the behavioral issues that we're seeing a lot of with breeds like that specifically. I see a lot of, it's interesting. I like to ask people from different parts of the states the dogs that they see, because I think it's really changes in like all across the country. There's like trends, right? So I've had like a shit ton of doodles this year, right? And it's like in other parts of the country, you see like 2 doodles. Like when was the last time you had a golden doodle?
Yeah, I've had one ever.
Right, one.
Yeah.
And I've had shit tons of doodles in the past 6 months. Other dogs too, but tons of doodles. And I haven't had one German Shepherd in the past 6 months. So it's just like the trends of the area. But I think that a lot of the behavioral issues in general with working dogs, and probably with most dogs, really comes from forcing them into this city life that doesn't make sense to them at all.
Yes. Yep. I think too, I was just talking to somebody about this. I think it was a client, because it was a German Shepherd and showing some pretty serious like dog aggression. However, he has dog friends, you know what I mean? So it's not genetic dog aggression. And one of the things I was kind of talking about, she said, well, I grew up with German Shepherds and it was never like this. And I'm like, well, yeah, like where'd your dog live? Outside. What'd your dog eat? Table scraps and Purina. What did your dog do? What happened if your dog bit someone? Well, it was either taken out back and shot or beat, right? What happened when the dog ran out on the road? You either beat its ass or it got hit by a car. And now with the modernization of not just training, but how we live with our dogs, letting them on our couch. Remember grandma didn't even let you on the couch, much less the dog, you know what I mean? So, now they live in our beds, they live in our couches, in our house, flat ass in our house. They eat our food. They eat boutique brands of dog food. I get it. I'm one of them. I think almost the primal instinctual relationship that we've had with dogs for hundreds of years is almost gone. And for me, it's kind of a big thing I try to go back to is like, don't just train and use these tools. Like, talk to your dog. Be your dog's friend. Go back to like, you don't even have to say a word, right? Like, use your body. Just smile at your dog. What does your dog do when you smile at it? My dog, if I was to look over at her right now and smile, she'd probably come over here like, hey, what's up? Yeah. She knows when I smile because it's that body language thing. And so many people don't even talk to their dogs anymore, smile at them. Nothing. It's just like that friend, like a roommate that's there at all times. And I think that's where we've lost a lot of that relationship with our dogs.
Yeah, when I first got into training, like taking it seriously and like that, this is what I want to do. And I had started with my own dog, and I started like e-collar training and working through all that stuff. And I remember at one point, my dad was questioning it. He's like, I don't understand. Like, you're saying all these dogs have behavioral issues. He's like, when I had a dog as a kid, we never trained him. He just never went upstairs. He just knew not to go on the couch. We barely ever put a leash on him. He'd follow us down the block and then go back home. Yeah. And I remember having this discussion with him, and I was like, but there were also certain boundaries that were set that you just don't recognize because you were a child. But guaranteed at some point that dog got beat. That dog got a smack. That dog had boundaries set from day one when it was brought home. It didn't just magically know not to go up the steps. At some point, it probably put its foot up the steps, and somebody probably, I call my grandfather's baby, gave him a smack on the butt, right? And he didn't do it again, and it was very simple. And the whole way that we live with dogs, like what you're saying, is kind of as much as it's out of a place of love, right? Why we bring them in the house and why we treat them like. Yeah. And it totally messes with dogs. And I think that you were saying to talk to the dog to, and I think a big part of it is to kind of be with the dog, right? Just to let the dog be a dog, but without us forcing what that's supposed to look like on the dog. We all have these, like, I think a lot of it is media and cultural things that are pushed on us of what a dog is supposed to be like.
Right.
And we kind of force that on our dogs as opposed to being like, let's look at the dog and see what he's supposed to be like based on the dog, based on what they actually do.
Yep.
I went to Ukraine a couple of times, and there's a lot of street dogs there and a lot of like dogs that live in the forest, and they just live like dogs. And I hung out with them because I wanted to see like what does a real dog actually act like, right? And these dogs were completely different than our home dogs. They not in like a dangerous feral way. They actually, most of them were extremely calm. And the reason why they were calm is because they weren't being forced into all this stuff that we do in the name of love, right? They were just existing, and it was a very cool thing to see that.
Yes.
What is this? Jonas said, can you touch on canine officers utilizing? Oh, that's an interesting discussion. Do you train with canine officers?
I don't. However, it's a big part of how I got into working dogs and shepherds in general, I would say. I did used to work with a lot of the canine officers, and sometimes, I mean, if they call me and say, "Hey, you want to come down?" I'm like, yeah. So I've been through a lot of the real life training with canine officers, right? The room clearing, live bites, no sleeves, no protective equipment. The dog's on a muzzle. Does it continue to fight, etc. So this is all going to lead back to what Jonas is asking.
I just want to, for anyone who's, the question that Jonas asked is, can Katie touch on canine officers utilizing a hand check and why it's not abuse? And can you just clarify, because not everyone who watches this and listens is a dog trainer, on what a hand check is, please?
Getting hit.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear because everyone, a hand check is kind of like a sweet way of saying hitting a dog, but a lot of people don't know
what he's referring to. There was a video where an officer was kind of playing ball, stuff like that with this canine, and the dog nabbed him on accident, but he corrected. And reason being, primarily because canines don't, and I just got asked about that. I get asked about this a lot. They don't know out, right? Like a regular dog or a sport dog. And they really shouldn't, because if anyone can verbally out that dog, say, and that's the thing that people ask too, well, shouldn't it only listen to the handler? Okay, so say the next 99 out of 100 times, it only listens to the handler when the handler outs it. But that 1 out of 100 times it outs because Joe Blow over here told him to. That's the difference between life and death. Okay, so canines pretty much are always choked off. They hold on until the guy is in cuffs, and no one's at risk of getting hurt. Then they choke the dog off. It's off. And canines don't give a shit, right? You can choke them off for a minute, and they're like, "You sure?"
Yeah, they're not our regular dude.
Yep. So, and the thing with hand checks, first of all, a canine, especially one working with the police department, should be able to take a slap, okay? Because that's not shit compared to what it's going to feel when he's on, Bob's leg because Bob just robbed a bank, and Bob's going, "Fuck you, get off me," right? So if I whop you and you let go, but then you're on Bob's leg because he's got a gun in his hand and he hits you and you let go, right? So it all kind of comes back to the dog really should be really, really tough, really fucking tough. And a way to make a dog tough is to hit it. And obviously you don't just run around hitting it for no reason, but I do it even with my dogs. Like when they're on a tug, or they're on a ball on a string or anything like that, I kick them and I hit them and stuff like that. And they know I'm not mad. They know the difference between mad and play. But it makes them tough. And I like a good, hard dog. And my dogs aren't even sport dogs. I just do it for fun, it's a confidence booster. It's good for building them up, good, just nerve strength, I don't know. But yeah, that's the whole canine premise. I'll get on a rant here. I could go all day.
I think it's an interesting discussion in general, the whole punishing a dog with your hand versus with a tool. And it's like a lot of people will be okay with seeing somebody press a button on an e-collar, but as soon as your hand touches that dog, you're abusive. And I'm like, why? Like, you really think that my slap on the butt is more
Right.
uncomfortable than
Right.
that high level e-collar correction that you're okay with, right?
Exactly.
And I don't think either one is abuse. I think it's all context. Like,
Yes.
what's going
Yeah.
on here? Why is it happening?
Right.
And is it working for what you're trying to do with it?
Yes.
And I mean, you're talking about like playing with dogs and hitting them. My pit, right? So I have 3 dogs, but my pit, who's the sweetest of my dogs, as soon as you give her a tug, and everybody thinks she's a mush and she has like no dog in her. As soon as you give her a tug toy, you like the average person would stay away from her because she looks like she's vicious, right?
Yeah.
I know it's all play, but she growls and I smack her and she loves it and it's a total game. But that's in play context. And then if I smack her in just a regular context, that's going to be very different in the way she takes it. And I think that's the biggest issue in this whole dog training shit where everybody likes to make drama about everything really is context. When context is left out of something, everything can be abuse.
Exactly. Yep. And I think, again, I could go on about this all day. Like I've got 5 German Shepherds and they can run around in my backyard. No one's dying. No one's killing each other. No one's chasing the cows out back and getting shot. No one's heading out on the road and getting hit by cars. Do I have e-collars on all of them at all times? No. The dogs that need it consistently have it on. If they don't need it on at all times, they don't have it on. Now, say they're to a point where I really don't have to correct them very often, but they do go ahead and blow me off or fuck up or get shitty with another dog or something. I'm going to throw a hand. I'm not going to let them get away with that. Now, is that on them? Yes, because they know what I asked. You know what I mean? If I told them no, leave it, or whatever, and they didn't, that's when I'm like, guess what? However, it's also on me. And this is where I kind of go back to this with clients is, a lot of people like to ask, well, how long will they be on the prong collar? How long will they be on the e-collar? As long as you want them to be. If you'll work up to high levels on the e-collar, you're probably not going to be on the e-collar forever. Is it nice to have it for backup? Yes. However, if you don't have that e-collar on and you need to correct your dog and you are too afraid to put your hand on that dog and you don't correct whatever it did, well, now you got to wait for it to do it again. Hope you're ready. Hope you have the e-collar on and or set the dog up to fail, right? So it's kind of a catch-22. If you don't want to be on the e-collar forever, it's either work high or don't be afraid to correct your dog with it. And corrections with your body aren't always a slap or a hit or backhand, anything like that. It can be so much as like spatial pressure coming into that dog's space and telling it, what the fuck did I say? I have tons of dogs that respond beautifully to that. Spatial pressure is one of my favorite things to utilize as a punishment and as a reward. Things like that. I think that's what people are afraid to talk about, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I think in general, punishment has boiled down to what people kind of view it. And the reason why people view it like this is because trainers tend to talk about it like this, that punishment has to come through a tool. And it has to be painful and it has to be harsh. There's a time and place for that, like, of course. And anyone who doesn't really talk about that, I think is hiding something. But there's a time and place for a harsh punishment, a strong punishment where, you're making the dog uncomfortable. But discomfort doesn't always have to be physical. Stepping into a dog's space with a presence is uncomfortable for a dog. And it could be a strong enough punishment for a dog. Like I use spatial pressure to teach a dog to go back to place, for example, with a lot of dogs, right? And it works really well as long as you have your timing, like any other correction, that your timing is the point, and that the dog understands it is the main thing. It's not about what we view as a proper, strong, good punishment. It's more about what the dog views as a proper, good punishment, right? And that's what it comes down to motivation in general with dogs, that I see it a lot, and it kind of bothers me where we look at motivation as like there's food and toys and there's collars and whatever. Like those are your 2 sets, when the reality is you don't get to decide what works. That's the real issue with it all, is you, the human, trainer, owner, whatever it is, doesn't get to decide what works ever. Every dog is going to tell you what's going to work. And if we get stuck on like, this is what I use, these are my tools, right? And this is what I use, then you're gonna have a dog. It's like, well, fuck your tools. That doesn't work with me, right?
Yeah.
And it could go on either end. It could be like that reward is useless to me, or that punishment is meaningless to me. And then what are you gonna do? And there has to be a bigger spectrum. The toolbox has to be much bigger for everyone.
Yes. And so I've never, again, growing up with horses, I've never been afraid to use my body to correct an animal, particularly dogs, horses. However, growing up with Hagen, my puppy, he's 15 months old now. He, I think, taught me more about using my body to correct and to train a dog than any dog ever has. Super food drive, super prey drive growing up, okay ball drive. The ball drive came later. Literally, the ball drive went to 100 and the food drive went to 0 right about like 8 months old. Almost hate to admit this. I first put an e-collar on him at 3.5 months old. Not something I normally recommend for clients, unless, you know, it's like kind of do or die. Mm-hmm. And with Hagen, it was a little bit do or die. So long story short, the puppy didn't respond until 80 on the e-collar, 3.5 months old. And that's kind of when I went, oh, fuck, like this is a different breed, right? Yeah. To this day, if the e-collar is not on 100, you might as well not have it on Hagen. It's absolutely pointless. And even then, it's, you know, again, it's a muscle stimulant, but it's like a and he's still doing his thing. He does not give a shit.
He just pushes right through it.
Yeah, he really will power through it. And so I had to really like utilize the e-collar was like my backup, but my hand was the thing that said, you fucked up, right? Like if he fucked up bad, he met this hand, and he's a phenomenal dog, but he's been a really hard dog to raise, really hard dog to live with, hard dog to motivate at times. Love him, but yeah, if someone was afraid to use punishment, this dog would have been at the pound or dead by now. So,
and what it boils down to really, like you said, with the tools with the owner, like what are you ready to really do for your dog, right? Yes. To make it really work. That's where the whole struggle comes in, where so many people struggle, because we could train dogs, but we don't live with the dogs, you know?
Exactly. Yep.
And yeah, I think that there's also a certain power to a personal punishment, right? Which doesn't come through this. Like this is extremely neutral, right? Yep. So if I press it, my dog just, he's going to know it comes from me because he's been trained to understand it comes from me. But at the end of the day, like it's a very neutral thing.
Yes. And let me show you my favorite correction. A healing stick.
A healing stick.
Yeah, I'm telling you. The angle. $12 on Amazon. You give a dog a little whap with that, and they're like, oh, shit, my bad. They take it really personal because it's a literal 2-foot extension of you. Yeah. And they take it so personal that the mental correction is way harder than the physical. And, that's where corrections are, like, awesome.
That's what really changes the state of mind. Like, we talk about state of mind so much. I think a lot of it changes when it's personal, when the dog almost feels like I personally offended this person, right? Yep. And that's like can create a whole level of respect that an e-collar is not going to get really. And absolutely. And it's again something people don't like to talk about, because like if somebody saw you using that on a dog and smacking a dog with it, you're hitting a dog, you're beating a dog, you're a horrible person, right?
Yeah.
But if you have this in your hand and you're just walking down the street and you press a button, it's like, oh, the e-collar trained their dog. That's so cool. That's awesome. Yeah. Right? And I think a lot of it is really just some sort of like emotional, strange connection that people make to it. But if we think about how dogs like will naturally communicate with each other, they're not using e-collars, right? Yeah, when I started working with dogs, I started working at a daycare, and I knew absolutely nothing about dogs. My experience with dogs was my own dog, who was a total shithead then, and dog parks. That was my extent of knowledge of dogs. I had no idea that this was an industry. I didn't know. And I started working at a daycare. And on my first week there, I was given a spray bottle, like a water spray bottle. And
my favorite.
Right. And I was told, like, are you scared of big dogs? No. Okay, cool. Go into the big dog area. And there was a whole ton of dogs. And my job was really to make sure they don't fight and that they're not too loud. But with no tools or anything like that allowed. But because I wasn't given any tools and wasn't allowed to use them, at least for the first while there, eventually I started to bring in tools and things changed there. But for the first while I didn't, and the spray bottle wasn't shit, I was forced to learn how to actually use my body. And like, it was the biggest blessing. I mean, a lot of headaches, you know, and like stressful, and it was tough, but it was also a huge blessing because I was forced to really watch the way these dogs interact with each other and kind of like become one of them in the sense of how I'm going to communicate with them. And it carries over so much for the way I work with dogs now and the way I interact with dogs and all that stuff, because if I was taught how to use an e-collar right away, then I think I would have missed out on a lot of what I could do with dogs just being.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, for sure. And I've had similar. I would even say I wasn't, you know, my education on e-collars was pretty nil until a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago, maybe a year before I started doing this for real. And even then, they were still shot collars, you know, and I had used a shot collar. I had a Beagle Cocker Spaniel thing that every time you so much as open a door, he was gone, right? You know, and he always made it to fucking AutoZone, and they always called the animal control. I got tired of bailing his ass out of jail. So I did the shot collar route. He never ran off again. But it wasn't real humane, and it wasn't, you know, and I got lucky it worked. Because even now, you know, we all kind of go through that thing with dogs, with client dogs, where it's like, oh, okay, well, I asked the dog to sit and he didn't. So let me just try and give him a little tap at like a 10. And the dog's like, holy fuck, I'm out of here, right? Even at a 10. So to go back to like these actual shot collars like they used to be, we'd be kind of screwed. It's nice to have the low level pressure, you know, I mean, I've had a dog one time that couldn't even work at a 2. It was too much pressure for him. You know, thank God I could go down to 1 and utilize a 5 as a correction for him on one of those old school shot collars. He'd have been like, bye, I'm packing my bags. See you later.
Yeah, so. Definitely the whole modern technology of how these things have been changed and modified and made into a whole new tool, really. It's totally different than what those old shot collars were. But it's very cool because you could really work with the dog at their level. And the average dog is not going to lose their shit at a 2. It happens occasionally. Right. But the average dog, especially probably the dogs that you're working with that sound like they're tougher dogs, are going to be able to handle most of that stuff.
Yeah.
What's your like favorite type of situation to train, to work with?
Dogs that have like pretty severe fear aggression of other dogs. Yeah. Love it. I love when I can take a dog who's like scared shitless of other dogs and is acting like, you know, fuck you, wants to kill every dog it sees. And like by the end of its 2 weeks, it's running with my pack like a true wild, free animal. That's the shit that gives me life. It really is.
Yeah. Yep. It's a beautiful thing to see those dogs come out. Right?
Yep. Big time. Especially with dogs. You know, I like human fear aggression. I like working it. I do well with it, but it's just, I don't know. Again, I think it goes back to like, I still have this notion that like, I don't love humanity as a whole. And so I don't expect dogs to either. Especially when humans are getting more and more fake, and dogs are too. And I want them to stay primal and intuitive, and I almost want humans to go back to that. So when I can see dogs like acting so naturally with other dogs, it almost makes me envious because, you know, I've got like a couple of friends that I can act that naturally with and truly get along with for long periods of time. And it's almost something I wish that we humans could get back to.
Yeah.
So
the things that I love about dogs, I mean, I happen to love people. Right. But I get what you're saying about humanity as a whole. Humanity as a whole is kind of shitty these days, especially. Yeah. But I think that dogs have like we could learn a lot from dogs, right? And one of the things that I've learned a lot from dogs is that natural way of being and that being present and really living in the moment. Like if we didn't if we didn't shove all these stories on our dogs, they wouldn't give a shit about anything that happened to them in the past.
Exactly.
What's
Yeah.
going to happen in the future? There would be no such thing as anxiety. Like I was saying before about those dogs in Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
And I hung out with them for a while. Like I left my people and I went and hung out with these stray dogs, and they interacted with each other and they lived with each other in a way that was so beautiful. It was extremely calm, very
Yeah.
relaxed energy with all of them. There was no anxiety whatsoever. They rarely even played with each other. They really just existed. Yeah, and it was such a beautiful thing to be around. The energy around it was really beautiful. And like as humans, imagine if we actually learned how to just exist, right? How beautiful it would be.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's peace. It was very peaceful around them. And like the only ones that played were the young ones, which is how kind of most dogs really are naturally. I think it's not that natural for them. It's because we've kind of made them into lifelong puppies in a certain sense in the way that we treat them, and they don't need to fend for anything, so they still play. They have that playful side, which is cool. They should, you know. But it was very cool to see that true primal dog, how they really, and they were around humans, but the humans didn't matter to them. It just was there, and the humans didn't bother them. Even the ones that were owned by people, the humans didn't bother them. They gave them food, they spoke to them for a minute or two in the morning, and they went about their day.
Yeah.
That's something that people should experience to see how dogs truly are.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I kind of hear it a lot too from clients, because like some of my favorite moments in my life are kind of when I'm out back. Say I'm just chilling in my pergola having a drink, and all 5 of the German Shepherds are at some point in my yard kind of stationed somewhere just chilling. And everyone's just kind of got their spot. They kind of survey their property. They look over, they watch, you know, but we're all just there. We're just existing. And a lot of people, you know, are, oh my God, like someday I want to have a bunch of German Shepherds like that and stuff too, you know. And it's like, well, I mean, it's awesome, but it ain't for the weak, you know. I mean, these dogs are great because I'm a hard ass, you know. I am a little bit of a Nazi with my dogs. Like I hold them accountable for everything they do from the time they're puppies. And I'm gonna tell you something right now. My puppies, the first year of their life, it sucks. I'm not a puppy person. I don't like puppies. I feel bad saying that. I just don't. I like dogs. You know?
Like, fuck this.
Yeah, like I like when they have some maturity and they know the rules. And it's not. I like training puppies. I don't like living with puppies.
Right.
I don't like teaching them not to use the furniture as like a parkour playground. Like I'll teach you to sit down, stay calm all day long. But the fucking just living with me, ugh, I hate it. It's the things that, you know, but again, those are the things that come from just like how you live with your dogs, not training sessions and not using their meals. And those things are important, but how you live with your dog at all times is what dictates how you live with your dog and how your dog lives with you. And that starts as a puppy. And so for my puppies, the first year of their life, their life sucks. It's boring. We play, but when they want to come inside and fuck off in the house, I don't allow it. I don't allow rough housing in the house. I've got 5 German Shepherds. My house would be trashed if I allowed rough housing in the house. You know, we go outside and we do that. Things like that. So and those are a lot of things I think that people struggle with, because puppies are cute and then they give you the eyes and they're apologetic. And well, if you're going to let them get away with it because they looked cute, then I guess that's how your life is going to go with that dog now, you know.
I find it's the hardest thing to teach owners is the whole living with dogs, because if you ask the average person what does training entail, they're going to probably list 5 things, right? Yeah. Sit down, stay, come, and heel. And then your dog is trained, like basic obedience, as everyone likes to call it. Yep. And like, I think that you can have an extremely well-behaved, awesome dog without teaching them any of that shit. I mean, I'm using my dogs as an example because it's just so easy, but like my pit, she's not trained. Yes. And just today, a client came to pick up their dog, and she was sitting on the porch next to me, and she was just chilling. And I walked off the porch, and she stayed there. And like and they're like, "Wow, she's so well trained." I'm like, no, she's not. Like, I never trained her anything. I've
Yeah.
never done shit with her really. Like,
Right.
she doesn't know what an e-collar is.
Yeah.
She doesn't, and I'm not like this with all my dogs. My two boys, they wear e-collars, and
Yep.
but with her, I never did anything with her. I never trained her. She just lives a lifestyle that makes it that this is how it is. It's very simple.
Implied expectations, right?
Yeah.
So just because you told them don't do this over and over and over and over, it's now an implied expectation.
Right.
And it has
And
nothing
she's
to
been
do with her
punished.
being answer a command.
Right.
See
She's
what?
been punished. It's not like
Right,
when I say
right.
training, it's not that she's not doesn't have rules. That's
Right.
what people misunderstand. She has a shit ton of rules, right?
Yep. Yep.
And she also has a shit ton of freedom. And
Exactly.
the rules are just serious. And really that's how it is with all my dogs. Just my
Mhm.
two boys, I use tools with them and things like that. But same thing, that they have a shit ton of freedom. They also have a shit ton of rules, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid to punish them, whether it's with a tool or without a tool, and whatever it is, and they know that, and that it's very clear. And that's really what changes it. And I could stop ever training like official things. Obviously, a recall is important, right? Okay,
Right. Yeah, that's the number one thing for me.
Right, but like past that, I can never train them anything if I wanted to, and we'd still have an awesome life because of the way we live. And that's the hardest part for most people to really get, because what does that look like to the average owner is what people struggle with. And that's what I find owners struggle with the most in terms of changing things up with their dog, because it's easy to say I work with my dog for 5 minutes a day, right? And then what?
Exactly. And I don't know about you, but like a big one I'm hearing lately is like, oh, my dog knows how to sit and shake. And I'm like, I don't care if your dog knows how to shake, that ain't trained. That's like, I need your dog to know how to sit down, stay calm. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all my dogs know. You know,
that's the
knows
stuff
some
that
extra
everyone
stuff
envisions.
because I work him extra to, I don't know why, because he needs it. But everybody else, they know sit down, stay calm. And that's all they will know. I don't care. As long as, for me, a well-trained dog is a dog who can live in the world and not freak the fuck out. Doesn't worry about other dogs, is neutral with other dogs at least. I prefer my personal dogs to be really quite dog savvy, so I can use them to help me train clients. Human neutral. We go somewhere, they're not freaking the fuck out. They're not afraid of new scenarios. That to me, that's a trained dog. I'm good with that. Yep. So even like heel, honestly, my personal dogs don't even know heel. If I need them to heel, I put them on a prong collar. But we live an off-leash life out in the country, so that's on me. Yeah.
But now that you're saying it, I'm thinking about it. My first dog, he knew how to roll over, give paw, give hugs on command, and all that stuff way before he knew how to not bite a dog. And how to walk nicely and how to be neutral and all that stuff. Like, I was that. I totally get where people are coming from with it, because I was that. And it's the way people are kind of taught, not consciously. No one's like teaching you this, but it's just the implied understanding of what training is like a dog that knows good tricks and doesn't move in the house and go to the bathroom. But it's so much more. I mean, Jonas said dog training is for clients, and
not wrong.
It's really true. And it's an interesting thing that I've been thinking about it a lot, really, the whole idea, because I think if I were to admit it, a lot of my clients' dogs are better trained than mine, right?
Yeah.
But my
dogs don't know shit.
More, right? But my dogs get to do a lot more. Like my dogs, when we went on this mini road trip, they weren't on leash the whole week, right? I mean, I live in the city, so I have to use leashes more than you probably.
Yeah.
But when we were out and about, they were on leashes once the whole week because we went for a walk in a random neighborhood. But besides for that, they're not on leashes. And we're around horses and we're around chickens and around goats and all these things that most people wouldn't be able to deal with that, and it would be totally a messed up situation. Angela, this is a question specifically for you. She addressed it to you. How do you convey this to clients? And she loves your tattoo.
Thank you. How do I convey what? I think I missed that.
I think she's touching on, if I'm correct, I think she's touching on this whole topic of how to live with your dog, and that training isn't really just these basic commands.
Yeah. So a lot of that, I do talk to them about weaning off of tools. Tools are great to have. And I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, if your dog's on tools, it's not trained. I don't feel that way at all. But if you're relying on a tool to live with your dog, you know what I mean? It's how peacefully are you living with your dog? So the big thing that I try to, I guess, I don't know. It really depends on the dog, but I really try to tell them, okay, well, this is the structure your dog needs, and these are the things that your dogs need, and this is when you put use the tools and put them on and take them off and da-da-da. But if you don't have the tool on for such and such and they do such and such, tell that dog not to fucking do that, right? And like, you don't ask the dog, you tell the dog, because the dog knows what you're asking. And part of peacefully living with a dog is that they do what you say. We need them to do certain things when we ask them to do them. So just demanding more of your dog, expecting more of your dog, holding them accountable for everything they do. That's a big thing for me. Holding them accountable for everything they do. I have 5 German Shepherds, and not a single one of them chases rabbits, squirrels, cows, cats, nothing like that, because I've never allowed them to. I've always held them accountable. And if they did go, oh, squirrel, and they were out of here, they paid for it when they got back. In fact, one of them, Hagen, was 7 months old, and he made his way. I live on a pretty major highway, not a freeway, but a highway, and he made his way out into the road. I heard a semi honking and was like, who's honking at my house? And there's my dog playing chicken with a fucking semi. He spent the next 24 hours in the crate when he came back. So you've got to hold these dogs accountable for what they do. And that doesn't just come down to, how you live with them, but a lot of times it's life or death. I have 5 German Shepherds. I've said
Jonas, you have to stop. I'm laughing at your comments.
You what?
I am just laughing at Jonas's comments.
Eyebrows when she talks about squirrels. I hate squirrels. I hate the squirrels, man. One of the things I have been kind of trying to get my older 2 to do, because they can handle the responsibility, is get those fucking rabbits. So we have a lot of rabbits here, and I kind of don't want them in my yard anymore. So I've been trying to promote them to chase the rabbits out of the yard. We had a couple barn cats. I did get them to chase their cat out. But if I didn't hold my dogs accountable for everything they did, I would have dog fights. I would have client dogs getting injured. I'd have dogs out chasing cows and getting shot, and rightfully so, because I truly don't believe that dogs ever have a place chasing livestock. I'd have dogs out getting killed in the road. So yeah, to go back to what Angela's asking, just holding dogs completely accountable for everything, not letting it slip, not feeling bad for them, not babying them.
Yeah, that's really the key to it. And if we think of anything, like I like to use when I have my consultation with clients before they decide if they want to work with me, I like to use, because I like to have this conversation beforehand. I don't want to work with a client and then they're like, oh, I have to change up the way I live. Oh, I have to do, right? I want them to know what's up beforehand. Right. So I always compare it to health, right? Health and fitness. And there's
I know nothing about.
No, me neither. But I know one simple thing.
Oh, perfect.
I know one simple thing. If all you do is lift weights and the rest of the week you eat pizza and drink milkshakes, you're going to be a fat fuck with maybe some big biceps, right?
That's me.
But I mean, I just started working out again after months of not doing anything and just letting my shit go. But I know that if somebody changes up everything in their life, right, and makes it not just a diet, but it's a lifestyle, they're guaranteed to be more successful with it. Yes. And this goes for anything that you want to do in life. And there should be no reason why it's any different with our dogs, of why we should think that just training them 5 minutes a day is going to make them into the dog we want. Right. Or just bringing them to a class once a week, that's going to do it, when there's so much more to their life than sit down, stay calm. And of course that stuff's important, right? Just if you want that health regimen, you probably should lift weights and you probably should use the treadmill and all that stuff, but it's not what's going to do it. You could still be you could still have your diabetes and drink all your sugar drinks and all that stuff, even if you're lifting weights all day.
Right.
And that's using, I think that's where humanizing dogs is important because it makes it relatable, right? Use those human examples.
Right.
So like Angela's a trainer.
Yep. Okay.
And her follow-up question was asking about like how to relay this topic to owners, but how to convey the act of punishment and correction without offending them, right? And I think it's really simple. Like, number one is just be real, right?
Yeah.
Don't mess around with it.
Yeah, if you've taken anything from this, it's probably that I'm bluntly honest. I've watched my language better than I thought I would. I'm very proud of myself, to be honest with you. But and I see she says she lives in a very fur mommy area. I've been following the comments too. I can't help myself. So for me, one of the things I like to do is example the corrections on myself. And I don't know, I'm not like, it's not like it's my kink or any shit like that, but put that prong collar on yourself and whap it and show that it's not digging into your neck and you don't even have the hair to protect yourself. You know what I mean? And one of the things I did one time was close the flat collar in the door and tried to take a drink of beer and it came out of my nose. I did it on a prong collar and I was able to slam the beer, right? I can just breathe better. Make an example of yourself and make an example of the dog if they'll let you, just a low pressure, quick corrections, small corrections. The dog's probably not going to scream its head off and shit itself and be out the fucking door. It's going to go, oh, fuck, my bad, right? Just like they do. That's what corrections are for. So that's it. The fur mommy area thing is a kind of a catch-22. But I think if people just are flat ass not ready for that conversation, they're flat ass not ready for that conversation.
Yeah, and they're probably not ready for the training that you offer, which is okay. They'll come around eventually when the dog bites somebody or something.
They're going to get sick of paying for the Prozac just for their dog to bite more slowly. Exactly.
They'll come around. And to me, like what I've learned in my short time doing this is that be as real as possible with the client. They'll appreciate it, and the ones who don't appreciate it, they're not meant to be your clients. Not every dog, not every owner is meant to work with every trainer. And like, I mean, I like your ideas of like making a show out of it with your, but even that, it's okay for people to understand that, like, yeah, we do use e-collars and prong collars on dogs. Like to me, the dumbest thing that I see in comments all the time is, would you put that on your kids? No, you fucking idiot. My kid is not a dog. My kid also doesn't eat out of a bowl and shit outside on the floor and all. I mean, I don't have kids.
Well, I don't have kids because I would crate and e-collar them. So
right, I don't have kids, but I'm saying like you don't do that with your children, right? But what you hopefully do with your children, if you're like any big
room,
is some sort of punishment. Exactly.
Yep.
And like to your fur mommy question, like to the fur mommy point, ask your fur mommies if their toddler ran into the street if they get a lollipop.
Right.
Exactly. Make it very real. Make it very real and personal about it, because that's when it changes, when it becomes about their kids' safety. And that's what most of dog training, a lot of the rules are about safety, human safety and all that, human safety and dog safety.
Yeah, exactly.
Jonas is on a roll. I don't know if you're looking at the comments.
Him?
I was like, should I block him and then let him back?
He loves me. Yeah, one of the things I've kind of touched on before, this kind of, Angela, take this or leave it. And Jonas kind of hated that I said it because he's more about changing, people's mindset, and I am too, if they're ready for it. So I'm very guarded in what I post, and just kind of how I approach things. I don't like to cause a big stir just because I don't like controversy. I don't like confrontation. So for me, when someone reaches out and says, hey, would like to send my dog to you for such and such board and train, and we talk, we go back and forth, and then they're like, oh, but you don't use those like spike and shot collars, do you? I'm like, have you looked into me at all? It bothers me that people would send their dog to someone for 2 to 4 weeks or more, and they haven't looked into them whatsoever. There's prong collars and e-collars in like everything I've ever posted, every picture, every video. So for me, it's a pretty big turnoff. And for the most part, the conversation's over. Not because I don't want to educate them, but just for the simple fact that they're probably that lazy of an owner that I just flat ass don't want to work with them. I don't like working with lazy owners. I don't like to program a dog and send it home. I don't think it's a thing that you can do anyways. There's a certain level that I will get the dog to, but I'm going to send you home with work because you and your dog need to fix your relationship in order for life to be good. I can train the dog. I can train the dog all day long, but I can't fix the relationship between you and your dog. That's on you. I can show you how to do it and tell you how to do it. And I do. But if you won't do it, I think the dog suffers. You know, the human suffers, but the dog suffers more, especially if that human goes home with an e-collar and is like, oh, I can just fucking fuck them up for doing this and that. No. Yes.
That's the key part. That's the most important part. I mean,
exactly.
I think for like since Angela is asking it from a dog trainer's perspective, I think sharing a lot of what you do before you do it. Yeah. Like before they find you. So sharing it online. Like I'm a big advocate of dog trainers posting a lot of content and showing as much of their work as possible. And being as transparent as possible so that you, for a couple of reasons. Number one, you just get to educate people. And I think that's cool. Right. And you get to help people who are not going to come to you for training. But in terms of like how it works with your clients is generally, there's always the people like you said who are just going to call up and be like, hey, train my dog, right? And they don't know shit about you. But generally, the more you post, the more people are going to know about you. And then you'll weed out, like someone's going to see, oh, this is one of those like mean, balanced trainers. And they're not going to call you in the first place, generally. You know? It makes it a lot easier.
Right? Yeah.
And the other end of it is when you have a lot to show for your work, when you do get those people who are on the fence about things, like what I always tell people is, go look at my stuff and you tell me. And if you're still on the fence about it, then that's fine. Like it's your dog. But after you look at my content and you see me training dogs, you see me work with dogs, then make a decision based on that. And we have it all at our disposal. Like social media is, I know you hate it, but it's awesome for that. And you might as well take advantage of it to work that part of the system really well.
Yeah. And to go back to, you know, people like Angela, any trainers out there, if you want to add me and reach out to me, I love helping other trainers. I love it. Like, I don't know why I'm not charging for it because it's like one of my favorite things to do. I love training people, especially when it comes to training them behavior mod. I love helping people go from like, hey, yeah, I'm holding like these fun little group classes and now I want to get into like working some fear dogs and stuff. I got you, boo. I got hundreds of hours of video on the YouTube. My YouTube's private, so I have to send you the link, you know, so you can see the videos. But I will send people videos all day long. And these aren't like 3-4 minute videos that you post on Facebook. These are, you know, 15, 20, 30, 40 minute videos. I'll send them all to you. You want help or you want, you know, even just a pep talk on how to be a bigger bitch like me, add me. Message me. I got you. Yeah, I'm real good at putting my foot down and being a very to the point person. I'm very, very blunt.
And the dogs need that, right?
Yeah.
Dogs need clarity.
I've yet to meet a dog that I think like one dog ever didn't do well in my board and train, and it's she was just she was over it. But dogs really do well with me because I don't do things with emotion. I'm not an emotional person. I really do just kind of approach everything super neutrally, and I'm very predictable.
So the key to being a good dog trainer is become a cold bitch and just your emotion.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big thing with dog training though, is take the emotion out of it. Corrections shouldn't be like, what I fucking tell you, don't do that. You know what I mean? It should be, don't fucking do that. Now let's move on. Right? Like
it's logic. It's all black and white and logical.
Yep. And you know, talking about dogs too, like they have human emotions. Do I think dogs are a little more complex than maybe sometimes we trainers give them credit for? Yeah. But they, you know, they don't feel depression and things like that, you know, and even like the anxiety thing. Like I think dogs feel anxiety, but not like we do. Sadness, love, you know, I know my dog loves me, but do you know how a dog loves?
Stop feeding your dog and see if he still loves you.
Yeah. Do we know how dogs feel love or perceive love? Yeah. So I hate to pull, especially when I say, something like training a dog is a lot like raising a kid. And it is. Raising a dog is very similar to raising a kid. What you punish is what you stop, and what you reward is what you get, in structure and roles and boundaries. But they just don't feel the emotions we do. And so we need to step back with our emotions with dogs too.
Yeah.
This whole all dogs are good and all dogs are perfect. Well, dogs are actually really fucking self-serving. And some dogs, like, to the core, are not real good. I've met a few. So it's not they're bad dogs, but they're just not, they're not fit for society.
The biggest, I think one of the worst myths out there about dogs and dog training is that dogs want to please, right? That there's magical, peaceful creatures that just want to please every human on earth. And it's I don't know about
1 out of my 5 gives a fuck what I want. 1 out of my 5. And we're talking about one of the most loyal breeds out there.
And the key to, I do these little daily training thought thingies.
Yep. I love them.
So thank you. So the one of them that I put recently that I think I should really talk about it more in a longer post, but it's the key to really what dog training is. The way I look at it is to make your dog feel and think that everything that that you want it to do is it's in its best interest. I can't talk.
Yeah.
Right? You're training the dog to believe that everything that you're asking of it, that this whole lifestyle, all these things that you're doing is for its good and its best interest. And that's what reward and punishment does, right? You reward a dog, exactly. And now that behavior is good for the dog. It's not that it's good for you. It's not like he made mom happy, so now he's going to do it again. Even in that sense, right? Even where reward could be you're celebrating that with the dog, right?
Right.
And that in itself is, again, it's not about the fact that he made you happy. It's about the fact that he enjoys that excitement from you, right? And same with the punishment side of it.
Yep.
Dogs aren't stopping because you're angry at them. They don't give a shit about your feelings when it really comes down to it. But they're stopping the behavior because it's no longer something that serves them.
Right. What do you do when you're angry? What do you do when you're happy they did it? Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
And that's what's, all these videos online, right? The dogs feel guilty, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all these types of things. It's no, the dog doesn't feel guilty. You just screamed at the dog for eating your shoe.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
The dog, and if people were able to separate this a little bit and actually see it for what it is, that it's a self-serving creature, which is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. We're also self-serving creatures.
Yep.
And if we think about ourselves, anyone who's going to be brutally honest about being a human is going to admit that everything they do in their life at some level serves them, right? Even a selfless act you're doing because it makes you feel good, right?
Or people post about it on Facebook.
Right.
Yeah.
And
another reason I love social media.
But if we boil it down to it, we're all innately selfish, and there's nothing wrong with that. People think that's a negative thing.
It's an element of survival.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And dogs are the most primal way that we can relate to it in our civilized life, right? Because we're not living in a jungle, but we can clearly see it if we really look at it, that dogs are all about survival when it comes down to it.
Yep.
And that means whatever is going to serve them is what they're going to do. And if it doesn't serve them anymore, that's going to stop.
Yep.
That's reward, that's punishment. It's very simple.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And again, it's super, super rare, that you get a dog that truly, truly cares, I guess, what you want. And again, it probably is just over time, it's been patterned that they know what good and bad is. But, my oldest dog, she's 6, and she's so much more in tune with me than any dog that I'll probably ever own. And so going back to the guilt thing, if I walk into the house and she's not there waiting for me, I know she probably got into something. A dog like that, I think, in a sense, feels a little bit of guilt because she already knows, right?
What pattern has been created for what she did?
Right.
That's the thing.
Because I haven't even walked in and shown with my body, damn it. I haven't said or done anything yet. But she's like, aha. Now, I remember how pissed she got last time, but I did it again. So I'm going to go hide in the bedroom.
Right. That's the key. It's
yes. Yep.
We just as humans, we forget about how strong patterns are.
Yes.
And dogs don't forget, and they have these pictures in their head of everything that's happened, right?
Yep.
So if last time she ate the shoe, right, she got a smack on the butt, or she got corrected, or you yelled at her, or you put her in a crate, or whatever it is, that sticks. And if that happened a couple times in her life, because chances are it did, right?
Yep.
Then that sticks. So she's like, one time she's like, I'm still a dog, fuck it, I'm gonna chew on this shoe, it's really good. She chews on the shoe, and then she goes, oh fuck, right? It doesn't take you being there. It's that pattern is so strong. And like, that's what people have to realize is if you actually look at it that way, you can realize also how easily you can really change things by changing the way you live with your dog, changing the patterns, right? And that's where it all plays out.
Because everything with a dog is patterning and conditioning. Everything. You know, I could teach my dog that no means to sit, right?
Yeah.
Because if I say no and they sit, and I reward, and I say no and they sit, what am I doing? You know, everything. They don't speak English. They don't read our minds. Do they read our bodies? Yeah.
Right.
But again,
like mind
it all
reading.
comes down to patterning. Yep.
Yeah. I had a friend by my house a while ago, and it was his first time meeting my dogs. And I remember he's like, your dogs really understand you. It's so cool. Like they really, and I was like, no, like I can, and I had this idea. I was like, I'm going to get a dog from the shelter one time. It's like, whatever, no one's going to own it anyways. And I'm going to train it all backwards just to prove this point, right? Like they don't know what no means or place. Like train all the commands backwards, mix everything up just to document it, to show people like, no, they don't understand shit you're saying.
I hope you kept that dog.
I know, I haven't actually done this.
Oh, okay.
It was just like this idea I had. No, I don't need another dog. But like it was just this idea I had. Like it would be really cool to show people, right? To document the whole process. And it's silly and it's stupid, but it would drill home the point of like, your dog doesn't understand shit. Your dog knows what happens when it hears the word park, right? That's all. It doesn't know what a park is.
Exactly. Yep.
What do you say like is what would you say is the most important thing that you wish owners knew, right? Like that if you can have every owner listen and hear what you're going to tell them, what would that be?
Oh, yeah. So I like when you ask other people this one. I think mine's going to be a little bit different because of the demographic of my clients up here. Be your dog's friend. You chose to bring that dog into your life and to obviously at some point get it help. And that's why you and I spoke, the client and I. Don't forget to just train the dog. Be your dog's friend. You know, you can't have your dog created and on place and doing all these things for its whole life. Obviously, when you're going through, some behavior mod and some hardcore training, you do need to do a lot of that stuff. But talk to your dog, engage with your dog, play with your dog. Just try to sometimes come back down to that dog's level, right? Connect with your dog. I think that's a big thing that people kind of forget, especially here, is and I don't know if it's because we kind of still have this like old school farm mentality up here where like we have dogs and they should just be there and be good, but we need to be our dog's friends.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't have clients that I don't think I've ever had to tell someone to be their dog's friend. And it's again one of those awesome things that I love about talking to so many trainers from different areas. Is that's definitely a demographic thing, right? Like in New York, I got to tell people like, stop being your dog's friend, right?
Yes,
like, too nice.
Like we get those, but
it's an interesting thing. And how do you see that play out? Like, I'm interested in that.
So Derek and I were just talking about this earlier. Up here, we tend to get less of what Angela gets, where it's like, oh, I don't want to use pound collars and shot collars. We get people that literally are like, if you need to kick this motherfucker in the face to get him to listen, then do. We do. We get a lot of people like that. And again, we work with some pretty serious behavioral cases too. So I think that is a factor. But it just goes back to, we can correct this dog and get it better, but you got to connect to the dog too. It can't just be punitive. You've got to reward. You've got to go back to why you got the dog in the first place. And it is a big thing we see people forget here.
Yeah. I have it the opposite. I have where people ask, so like, am I going to be able to still be my dog's friend?
Yeah.
Right? Are we going to be
Yeah.
able to still have fun? Are we going to be able
Yeah.
to still do things? And I have to talk about it from the totally opposite end of like, yes, but we have to first kind of stop some of that. Like, let's not be friends for a little bit and make your dog earn your friendship, right?
Yes.
Like, you've been only this like sweet, giving, stepped all over friend for so long that become a friend with some boundaries, right? And like, and then you get more out of it. So it's such an interesting thing to hear that. My whole, even in some of my content, I try to show that. Like, it's why I like to show my dogs off leash a lot, or the things I do with my dogs, because I want people to see that this whole training lifestyle doesn't suck. It only sucks if all you do is the shitty stuff. But if you really use it and implement it, it's awesome. I mean, just today, a client was picking up a dog that was boarding with me, and she's like, was he good? Right? The typical questions. Was he good over the weekend? And I was like, yeah, like, should I expect him not to be good? Like, he's always been an awesome dog. He had no behavioral issues. He was just a young dog that needed training. And she's like, yeah, well, we started to ease up on some of the rules in the house, so I wanted to make sure that, like, he was still good. And I was like, good. Like, ease up on the rules in the house if your dog is ready for it. I don't care. Your dog doesn't have to live on place, right?
Yeah, it's not forever. Right.
And like, yeah, I told you to have your dog on place for very long periods of time in the beginning, because that was important to teach him how to chill, to teach him how to work through shit. But now, like, if your dog is ready for it, and the cool thing is you can always go back to it. So it's such a cool thing to hear that other perspective of it, of like connecting.
Yeah, and I don't know which one's worse, honestly.
Friend, right? I don't know. They're both,
yeah.
That's the whole idea, is about finding that balance, right? That's really what it's about. You need both. You need to be an ass and a good friend. You like, that's the idea.
And you got to be good with people. Yeah. You have to teach people how to be less of a friend to their dog. I have to teach them how to be more sometimes. It's hard either way. And if you can't do that, either one, you're just not going to get far. Yep.
So since I don't know that angle of it really, I've yet to have a client like that. What message do you give over to people? So like, yeah, be a friend with your dog is a very broad thing. What do you mean by that when you talk to a client?
Motivating, taking, hand feeding meals, stuff like that's kind of basic. Playing with a ball, talking to your dog, not all you do is bark commands. Just if you're sitting on the couch, yeah, my day was good. How was yours? You sit around, not do shit because you're my dog and I pay for everything around here. Yeah, of course you did. You know what I mean? Just the dog gets to know you and some of the nuances of your body and your face and your voice just through regular conversation. I think sometimes even just removing like the rest of the family members, if you've got a crazy busy household and the dog always takes a back seat, take that dog out for 15 minutes by itself, right? Just a little one-on-one time, stuff like that. I think stuff like that just kind of reminds the dog that like, hey, I'm important. I'm a being, things like that.
Yeah. I love that, actually. I think that's so cool, that whole perspective of it. Yeah. And I think that's the relationship when trainers talk about like, have a good relationship with your dog. I think that's a big part of it that definitely plays into it, right? Because I firmly believe that obviously the relationship has to have boundaries. And I know you believe that. We all believe that. It has to have boundaries. It has to have accountability. It has to have all this stuff. But what you said is like a very beautiful side of it is don't forget like why you got this dog. Don't forget why you got it. And at the end of the day, these dogs don't last long, right? They're gone before we know it. And enjoy the time with them. Okay, another one with my own dogs, but it's just going to happen. I talk about my own dogs a lot. I love them. But when I got Hendrix, my golden retriever, right? He kind of fell into my lap. And it was like a very, I just got him. And he was diagnosed as neurological issues from a purely positive trainer. So he ended up becoming mine. And he was really well trained very, very quickly. I mean, he's a golden, right? So in no time, he was very well trained. And I had him off leash and we were doing great things. But I remember talking to a trainer friend of mine. I'd had him for a couple of months already. And I was like, my dog doesn't love me. And I felt very weird saying it because I was like, yeah, dogs don't love you, right? I'm a dog trainer. I'm all tough, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, my dog doesn't love me. Like, we don't have a connection. Yeah. And it felt very weird. Yeah. And because I had two other dogs who were crazy about me. But this guy was like, he'll do what I say. And everything was, but he didn't, I knew there was no connection. I just felt it. And she said that similar to what you just said, like, do you ever take him for a walk by himself? Like you have two other dogs and now it's just three dogs and he's just part of the pack, but When was the last time you played with him alone? When was the last
Yep.
time you trained with him alone? Took him for a walk alone? Just pet him by himself without the other two dogs getting pet at the same time.
Yep.
And it was like a switch in my head. I was like, I guess I was that owner, right? That you were just talking about without realizing it.
Yeah.
Because I had two other dogs, so he kind of just became a part of the pack right away, but never had that. And he was great, like pack wise,
Yeah.
but he never had that opportunity to bond one-on-one with me. And as soon as I started that day, I was like, take him to the park. We went for walks one-on-one and take him to the park, just me and him. And within a week, 2 weeks, like everything changed. And
Yeah.
it was a very cool thing. And I remember feeling like a total idiot saying it, like my dog doesn't love me, but that's cool now that you're bringing it up, because that's, yeah, I guess I was that one owner that needed
I've
to
done
hear
it too. Yeah. Yeah. I can't tell you I've always been great about it with mine. Hagen was one of them because he was so hard to live with, you know, and he was too. He was a puppy that, and this is super weird coming from a German Shepherd. He was a puppy who loved everyone more than me. And for me, that was like, what the fuck, man? I got a German Shepherd, not a lab. What's going on here? Like, this is not right, you know? So I struggled to take him places, and he was he's hard to correct, hard to motivate. I didn't want to take him out places by himself. He annoyed me, and he wanted nothing to do with me. I didn't take him to a store for like 9 freaking months because he desperately tried to get away from me. And like literally tried so hard to get to other people that it looked like I abducted this dog. So for 9 months, I didn't take him. So I just took him to a store for the first time about a month ago again, and he did pretty damn good. But yeah, even I had to take that step back and go, Katie, listen to your own advice. You know, you can't just like follow the rules and do the structure and do the meal feedings and work his brain and work his body. You got to be friends with your dog. And now I love the fucker. You know,
it's such a beautiful thing. Actually, I'm so happy I asked the question, because it's totally, like you said, it's totally different than any other trainer who's answered that question.
Oh, cool.
But it's such a cool thing that I think most trainers don't think about it at all. I don't think about it a lot because it doesn't come into play. But
a lot of time, it's not the love that we need to work on, but sometimes it is.
Right. Yep. And even if it's not, like, I'm thinking about it now that you brought it up, and even if it's not the love aspect of it that someone needs to work on, right? It's still an important message, because let's say, like, when I'm teaching a client, right, and I'm teaching about like structure, right, and like drilling that home, and like that reminder of and be your dog's friend is a very, very cool thing. Mm-hmm. And besides for how real it is, like I really felt it, I like that, but it's also an important thing for owners to hear, right? That the goal of this is not to make your dog just obedient and just like a drill sergeant relationship. Right. It's just to add this side of it in so that your friendship gets even better.
Yep. And I think that's a big thing that's kind of lost with sometimes in translation with balance trainers, is that we're almost trying to make the humans happy and not the dog. And so we need to obviously remember both. Now, and that's the whole point of balance. We're using good and bad, yes and no, positive, negative, happy dog, happy human. Got to do both. It's just something that sometimes I think is lost in the message.
Yeah, I really love that a lot.
Thank you.
All right. I think we're going to end on that note. Be your dog's friends, guys. That's so cool. Like, thanks. You got me thinking a lot with that answer. I really appreciate it a lot.
I'm glad. I'm telling you, this dog right here. Oh, this one's going to get in the way. Oof. That dog wouldn't be here today if I didn't follow my own message. So, yep.
That's
Hogan. It's important. Yep. Because he was a good dog, but we weren't clicking. And now I'd kill for that dog, you know?
Yeah. That's awesome. Love it. All right.
Everybody's going to come say hi.
I remember we were saying it before we went live that the dog end up doing shit. So I was
moved,
I don't know if you noticed, I slipped away from here for a second because I slowly had all of them and it would have been loud. It very quickly would have.
I saw you. I was like, I got this. I'll hold up I'll be the backbone here.
It was going to get very loud very quickly with the way they were starting to play with each other.
You're not kidding. Yep, it gets out of hand fast.
Tell everyone how they can find you, work with you, get to know you, all that stuff.
Last Journey Canine on Facebook, lastjourneycanine.com. Me personally, if you want to. I don't do a lot with my personal Facebook. I try to keep it pretty personal. But yeah, so that's the
All right, cool.
Facebook or the website page. Yeah, are the
So
best, I would say.
Last Journey Canine.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And on Instagram, it's Last Journey Dogs, I think, right?
It is. I don't do anything on Instagram anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, I follow a few people on there just to keep eyes on them. That's about the only reason I'm still on there. That might not be around too much longer. I'm on TikTok, but
that might not be around too much longer either.
I know. I'm not as cool as Whitney though. She's the best.
Yeah, she has a huge TikTok following.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
You won't catch me dead putting that much effort into TikToks.
It was cool. I mean, she disappeared off of Instagram and just blew up over there. And I was like, I mean, when I found her there, I was like, that is so cool.
Yeah, that's my dream. So I really should take notes from her, but it's too much work.
All right, guys. Thank you for coming on. This was an awesome conversation. I really had a great time. I appreciate it.
Me too. Thank you.
You have awesome insight that a lot of people should hear more of. So that's cool. Do more with it. Put it out more. People need to hear what you're saying.
Will do.
Take care, everyone. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're listening on wherever you listen to this, I don't even know how that works, but thank you all for tuning in. Hope you all have an awesome night. Love you all. Thank you for coming on, Katie. This was awesome.
Thank you.
I loved it. Y'all have yourselves a good night and stay kind.